For several years, Jimmy Fallon was the king of late night. His giddy laugh and schoolboy energy weren't just some random quirks, they were part of his brand. To millions, he was this authentic host who just enjoyed being around people. But now, looking back, it all feels like a performance. Jimmy wasn't just another late night host. He was NBC's crown jewel in the digital era. Under his lead, The Tonight Show became a viral machine. Segments like lip sync battles, Wheel of Musical impressions, and egg roulettes were all engineered for the internet, and Jimmy delivered them with this playful charm that made things lighthearted and fun. He built a persona: goofy, fun, agreeable. He laughed at everything, praised every guest, and stayed far away from anything too serious. For a long time, that worked. His clips ruled YouTube, and his show helped redefine late night for the social media age. But over time, the cracks began to show. The laugh that once felt genuine started to sound exaggerated and forced. His hyper energy, which was once endearing, began to feel obnoxious and disruptive. And when it came to his personal life, it only got worse. Rumors of drinking problems, self-inflicted injuries, and whispers of emotional instability. Then, in 2023, it all blew up. Rolling Stone published an investigative report where former employees described The Tonight Show as a toxic workplace. Accusations were made saying Jimmy was explosive, cruel, and emotionally unstable, creating an atmosphere behind the scenes ruled by fear. Today, he's still on air, but people don't buy into his shtick like they once did. The show isn't pulling the same numbers it used to, the viral moments have slowed, and the buzz around Fallon has largely disappeared. Like so many public figures whose personas eventually collapse, Jimmy's story begins in a place that feels almost innocent. When he was a kid, he wasn't chasing fame, he just wanted to be an altar boy. He grew up in a strict Catholic family where going out wasn't really allowed, but that didn't bother him much because home was fun. Music and comedy were a big part of his family life. Jimmy's dad played guitar and sang in street groups when he was younger, and he brought that same energy into the house. Every Friday night, his parents would record comedy shows like the Dr. Demento Show and Saturday Night Live, muting curse words and skipping over inappropriate scenes. Then on Saturdays, the whole family would sit down and watch them together. That's when Jimmy fell in love with comedy. But more than the sketches, it was the impressions that hooked him. He'd spent hours mimicking the voices and mannerisms of guys like Dana Carvey, John Travolta, and Adam Sandler, not for attention, but just to make his parents laugh. For Jimmy, there was something addictive about making people feel good. That need to be liked, to be entertaining, to always keep the mood light. It started young.
I've always wanted to please people since I was a kid. Like, I don't know if it was my parents or my grandparents, or I wanted to make people feel good and give everyone, or if I'm at a party, I want to make sure it's the best party, you know, and I'm giving everything. I want to make sure it's pleasing or appeasing, one of those words.
As time went on, SNL became an obsession for Jimmy. Most nights, he'd sit at home with a beer watching the show, and his parents were fine with it since it kept him indoors. It became something of a ritual. He eventually came to prefer watching SNL in complete isolation, just to make sure nothing and no one interrupted the experience. By high school, he was going to comedy shows, performing musical impressions, and adding a little stand-up into the mix. Looking back, it was a perfect blend of everything he'd eventually bring to his late night shows. This intense love for entertaining people led Jimmy to drop out of college and move to LA to chase a career in comedy. He got himself a manager and started booking small gigs, earning about $7 per set. It wasn't much, but for Jimmy, just being in the game was enough. Still, he understood that passion alone wouldn't be enough. If he really wanted to break through in comedy, he had to get better. So he started taking classes at the Groundlings, a legendary improv troupe in LA. That's where he began sharpening his skills, and when people finally started to take notice. Soon, he landed his first minor TV role in the show Spin City. He stayed with Groundlings for the next 2 years, performing on the side. But even as his career slowly started moving, his dream remained the same. What he really wanted, more than anything, was to be on SNL. His obsession went so far that when Warner Brothers offered him a sitcom deal, he insisted on one unusual clause in the contract. If SNL ever called, they had to let him go.
I remember putting in the contract that if I get Saturday Night Live while I'm doing the sitcom, that I can contractually get out. And they said, no, that's the whole reason. No one can, you can't. I go, well, that's the only reason I have to get this clause in my contract. And they said, no one's ever asked for that, but okay. So they put it in my contract.
In Jimmy's own words, "This was my ultimate goal. If I ever cut into a birthday cake and made a wish, I would wish to be on SNL. If I threw a coin into a fountain, I would wish to be on SNL. If I saw a shooting star, I would wish to be on SNL. I remember saying to myself, if I don't make it on the show before I'm 25, I'm going to kill myself." Determined to make that dream a reality, his manager began sending out audition tapes to SNL producers. Eventually, Jimmy was offered a chance to audition, but it didn't go well. His set just didn't land, and he walked away with nothing. For someone who built his entire identity around this one goal, it was a brutal blow. But a year later, he was given another shot. This time, he was auditioning in front of SNL creator Lorne Michaels himself, a man with a reputation for being nearly impossible to impress.
You know, my mom always told me to get a lot of, how you doing? To get some exercise. And so she used to say all the time, she'd say, "Why don't you go to the store with your mother?" And I would say, "Why don't you shut up?"
He mimicked Adam Sandler, Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and many more. Then pulled out his guitar and added musical impressions as well.
Now here's The Cure. My tears are like hydrochloric acid, it burns my face. I'm so depressed. I'm on Prozac, I need help.
He gave it everything he had, and everyone in the room could see how passionate he was. Tina Fey, a writer who joined SNL the year prior, said, "I was in the room that day. He was one of 2 people I've ever seen who was completely ready to be on the show. Jimmy was ready, like if there had been a show to do that night." Jimmy's performance was really well received, and it was enough to convince Lorne Michaels he was the man for the job. Fallon made his SNL debut in 1998 at just 23 years old, joining the cast at the start of the show's 24th season, and it didn't take long for him to make an impression on viewers. By his 4th episode, he'd already made a name for himself thanks to his spot-on impression of Adam Sandler. But it wasn't just about the impressions. Fans loved how Jimmy fused music into his comedy in ways few SNL cast members ever had. He'd pull out his guitar mid-sketch, and somehow it worked.
It's almost the 14th of February, so try and guess.
Even though SNL was built around ensemble performances, Jimmy quickly emerged as a breakout star. Viewers couldn't get enough of his energy, and Lorne Michaels took notice. The two developed a close professional relationship. However, Jimmy also began to develop a negative reputation for how often he'd break character during sketches. At first, it seemed innocent. Maybe the jokes were just too funny, and he couldn't hold it in. But as it became more frequent, it started to annoy people. Viewers and even castmates felt it was unprofessional.
I like movies.
Always treat the customers with
The usual. Quiet strolls, family stuff.
Many believed he did it on purpose to steal the spotlight and make the sketches all about him, and whether that was true or not, the reputation stuck. This bothered Jimmy, but the bigger issue was something few were aware of. He was dealing with alcoholism. His castmate Horatio Sands, who often drank with him, later described them as super-functioning alcoholics. According to Horatio, the drinking was a way to cope with the crushing pressure of the job. He said, "That kind of goes hand in hand with SNL, some kind of substance abuse issues. Because it's so stressful, you easily find yourself blowing off steam a lot." At the time, it didn't seem like a problem. Jimmy was still showing up and performing, so most people didn't catch on. But for those really paying attention, it felt like a warning sign, one that couldn't be ignored forever. Originally, Jimmy planned to spend just 3 years on SNL, but Lorne Michaels convinced him to stick around for longer, offering him a major opportunity, co-anchoring Weekend Update alongside Tina Fey, who had since moved from the writer's room to the cast. The setup was simple. Jimmy and Tina at a desk, cracking jokes about weekly headlines and celebrity gossip. Although straightforward, it was a significant gig, because Weekend Update put the spotlight directly on Jimmy. More and more opportunities began rolling in. Soon, he was hosting the MTV Movie Awards, modeling for Calvin Klein, and in 2002, he was named one of People magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People. By 2004, Jimmy's contract with SNL had ended, and like many SNL alumni before him, he ventured into Hollywood. Riding the high of his success, he signed a 2-movie deal with 20th Century Fox. Everything seemed to be going his way, until it wasn't. This video is sponsored by Raycon. So I've been using Raycon's updated Everyday Earbuds Classic for the past few weeks, and honestly, they've replaced every other pair I own. The new active noise cancellation actually works. I've been using it a lot when I'm editing or walking around the city, and it blocks out the perfect amount of noise, with the option to turn it off whenever you want. They've got 8 hours of playtime, a 32-hour battery in the case, and 3 different sound modes depending on what I'm listening to. The fit is super comfortable as well. No slipping and no pressure on the ears, even after long stretches, which is great because that's a problem I've had with all the other earphones I've used. The built-in button controls are really intuitive, so there's no fumbling to pause, skip tracks, or take a call. They're just reliable, everyday earbuds I actually use, and on top of that, they're affordable. If you want to support the channel and try them out for yourself, go to buyraycon.com/tellusmore to get 20% off the fan favorite Everyday Earbuds Classic, or just scroll down and click the link in the pinned comment or description. Sponsored by Raycon. His first film, Taxi, an action comedy about a suspended cop and a fearless cab driver chasing down bank robbers, was torn apart by critics. They slammed the plot and the weak humor, and that was reflected in the ratings. His second movie, Fever Pitch, a romantic comedy about a baseball-obsessed school teacher who tries to balance his love life with his devotion to the Boston Red Sox, performed better than Taxi, but the reviews were lukewarm. After 2 underwhelming films back-to-back, the buzz around Jimmy faded. Hollywood, it turned out, wasn't the dream he'd imagined. He said, "I got 2 shots at major movies. They didn't open. Nothing you could do. It just didn't work." After living his dream on SNL, then watching his film career fall flat, Jimmy entered what he would later call a lost period. He felt stuck and drank a lot more than he should. He said, "I was probably drinking more than I should have been drinking. It wasn't like sitting and watching old tapes of me on SNL with the screen flickering in front of me, but I was like, I can't figure out what I want to do." It was a rough patch, but not everything from that time was a loss. It was on the set of Fever Pitch that Jimmy got to know producer Nancy Yovanovitch, and they got married in 2007. Around that time, Conan O'Brien was set to take over The Tonight Show from Jay Leno, which meant late night needed a new host. After some serious lobbying from SNL boss turned friend Lorne Michaels, Jimmy was eventually announced as Conan's successor in May 2008.
It's gonna be fun. I'm interested in talking to people. It's gonna be it's a grind. It's I'm just gonna try everything, and what works, hopefully we'll do more of. What doesn't work, we just gotta roll with the punches.
It was a major comeback moment, putting him back in the spotlight after a few quiet years, but the public were skeptical. To many, it felt like blatant nepotism. They argued that Jimmy had little to no interviewing experience. He'd spent most of his career doing celebrity impressions and comedy bits, not exactly the background you'd expect from a late-night host. Many simply couldn't picture him filling the shoes of Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, or the legendary Johnny Carson. And to be fair, the concerns weren't unfounded. Jimmy didn't have the resume, but he did have something else, and that was massive appeal with young audiences from his SNL days. NBC saw that, and they decided to take the gamble, and luckily for them, their bet paid off. Over the next 6 years, Jimmy didn't just hold his own. He became a staple of late-night TV. What made him stand out was that he didn't try to directly copy the hosts that came before him. Instead, he leaned into his own strengths and made the format his own. He transformed late night into something more fun and playful, building it around the same sketch comedy style he was known for on SNL. But perhaps what truly set Fallon apart was how he embraced YouTube and social media. He didn't just hope audiences would tune in at night. He made sure his best bits were everywhere online by morning. His segments were built for the internet, and many of them racked up millions of views from people who never even watched the full show. Late night found a second life online, and Fallon helped redefine what a talk show could be in the digital era. All of that momentum made him the obvious choice to take over The Tonight Show when the hosting position opened up in early 2014. But the decision wasn't just about numbers. After the messy and very public fallout between Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien, a story in and of itself, NBC was looking for someone safer, someone lighthearted, uncontroversial, and easy to root for. Jimmy fit the bill perfectly. He wasn't political like Jon Stewart or edgy like Conan. He stayed away from controversy and focused on fun. So NBC didn't just hand him The Tonight Show. They built their entire late-night identity around him, and for a long time it worked. Fallon's debut pulled in 11.3 million viewers, the show's most watched week in 2 decades. The Tonight Show managed to fit in even more segments than there were on late night, with more parodies, music, and pop culture. And everything was packaged into small clips designed to go viral. Lip sync battle,
and I know she'll be the death of me, at least we'll both be numb.
history of rap, Wheel of musical impressions, These segments gave the show a life of its own, and there were many, many more. He brought on stars like Brad Pitt, Lady Gaga, Tom Hanks, and even then President Barack Obama. Fallon delivered exactly what NBC wanted. His show topped ratings, consistently outperforming The Late Show with David Letterman and Jimmy Kimmel Live. But as time passed, something started to shift. The same friendly, carefree energy that once made Jimmy so beloved began to feel overly rehearsed, like he was stuck playing a character he couldn't turn off. His laughter in particular started to raise eyebrows. Fallon would regularly laugh loudly, slap his desk, and double over even when the guest hadn't said anything funny, and audiences began to notice. Take this interview with Brian Williams. As soon as it began, Jimmy broke out into a fit of laughter before Brian had even finished what he was trying to say.
That's what I'm talking about. Brian Williams, just don't know how to thank you. It may take me a couple months to repay you for all you've done. You know, Jimmy,
Fallon's reaction was completely over the top, and the seemingly fake, forced laughter became a pattern.
And 10 is, for me, co-hosting the Oscars with James Franco.
We looked and he was watching Friday.
his movie?
Yeah, he was watching his own movie.
He was watching his own movie.
He was
and
dying.
really dying laughing?
He couldn't get enough of it, man.
I love that story so much, man. It's so good.
But I bet they sold less Porsches the day after that photo was taken.
Oh my gosh, it made me laugh so hard.
It really looked like he was putting it on, and comments like, "That made me laugh so hard," didn't help. Once viewers started picking up on Jimmy's fake, robotic laughter, they couldn't unsee it. Memes began surfacing, making fun of how he laughs at absolutely anything, and compilation videos showing all his worst offenses started circulating. This was when older moments of Jimmy fake laughing began resurfacing, and arguably the worst of the lot was this 2011 interview with Ryan Gosling. In it, Ryan is telling a story about a massage gone wrong, and Jimmy jumps in with the most exaggerated laugh imaginable.
And then he tries to connect my right foot to my left arm, and he's trying to connect them like this, and I'm in such pain. I go like that,
yeah,
and his belly goes in my mouth.
That's extra right there. You gotta pay extra for that one.
And
Gross.
It's like the Blob, you know. It just keeps like...
The story was definitely humorous, but it was nowhere near as funny as Jimmy made it seem. Another habit that viewers noticed was how Jimmy would praise every guest exactly the same way, using the same scripted compliments over and over. Whether it was, "You're the best," or "Oh my god, I love that movie or album," it began to feel less like genuine admiration and more like pre-programmed flattery.
Gosh, there's no one doing it like you're doing it. I keep telling everybody, it's the best movie I've seen in a long, long time. So great! You're so great! You're a great actor. I love you. You're just an amazing actor.
Kendrick Lamar, the biggest name in music.
This tendency to constantly praise his guests likely ties to Jimmy's innate desire to please people.
You've been accused of acting like you like everything. How do you answer this grave charge?
I want everything to work. And I know people come on my show, they're selling something. I have to sell their thing. And I know how much work goes into it. And you do a movie, and it's 4 months of shooting and then 2 months of selling it. So it's like half a year of your life. I want it to be a hit, so I always root for everything.
But the truth is, not every album can be your favorite, and not every movie can be the best you've ever seen. So when you say that to every guest, it stops sounding sincere and starts sounding like you're just saying it for the sake of it. Recently, Blake Shelton appeared on The Tonight Show and called Jimmy out for this very thing when comparing him to Post Malone.
You can't be around that guy without having a good time, and he's just so excited about everything.
Yeah.
You guys are a lot alike now that I think about it.
We are?
Except he's genuine about his excitement. But anyway,
Jimmy tried to play off his discomfort here, but I'd bet that hit a nerve. When Jimmy isn't forcing a laugh or showering his guests with compliments, he often interrupts them. Whether intentional or not, he has a habit of cutting people off or jumping in with an ill-timed joke. When Dakota Johnson came on the show, she called him out right after he interrupted her early in the conversation.
So you go out to walk the dog?
Well, no.
It's cool.
I sort of...
Do they allow dogs at the hotel?
Aren't you supposed to let people talk on the show?
Dakota's known not to shy away from confrontation on talk shows, but even Taylor Swift had to push back during one of her appearances. She was trying to finish a thought when Jimmy cut her off multiple times in a row.
I mean, we've had
had a really good time today.
Taylor!
Taylor! No, see where I'm going with this at least. Nobody ever listens to me.
Oh my
Finish a
gosh.
thought.
Oh my God.
So what I was saying is
You're not even looking at me.
Because I'm trying to think of what to say next.
Jimmy makes these kinds of interruptions all the time. It's just that guests rarely call him out for it. Around this time, concerns started growing about Fallon's off-screen behavior, particularly his drinking and partying. In June 2015, Jimmy broke one of the fingers on his left hand, claiming that he'd slipped and fell in his kitchen.
So basically what happened is I tripped and fell in my kitchen on a braided rug that my wife loves, and I can't wait to burn it to the ground. And I tripped and fell, and I caught my fall, and I'm getting up, and my finger is sideways.
It wasn't a small thing. Jimmy needed surgery and had to take 2 weeks off the show. But then reports surfaced that before the fall, he'd been out dining and taking pictures with fans, many of whom were drinking wine. Naturally, people began to wonder if he'd been drunk when it happened. Just 2 months later, he chipped his front tooth while trying to open a tube of medication for the same injured finger, and that raised more eyebrows. How hard do you have to go at a medicine tube to break a tooth? Then came the incident that really set off alarm bells. 2 months after the chipped tooth, Jimmy ended up in the hospital again. This time, he'd reportedly dropped a bottle of alcohol during an awards event, slipped on it, and cut his hand badly enough to leave a trail of blood. Once again, he brushed it off as just another weird accident, but by this point, people weren't buying it. The concern was real. According to insiders, even NBC executives were getting nervous. There were whispers that his drinking was getting out of hand, and that it might even be putting a strain on his marriage. When Jimmy was asked about the rumors in an interview, he denied everything, saying, "I could never do a day-to-day job if I was drinking every night." But for many, the denial didn't feel all that reassuring. Stories of drunk Jimmy showing up at bars and dancing late into the night kept popping up. It felt like a ticking time bomb. But in 2016, another controversy stole headlines, one that had nothing to do with Jimmy's drinking. In September, Donald Trump made an appearance on The Tonight Show while still running for president. Fallon had built his brand on being apolitical and uncontroversial, and that didn't change for Trump. Instead of diving into policy or pressing him on his more inflammatory comments, Jimmy kept the tone relaxed and non-confrontational.
Yeah, there's probably kids watching you right now. If they're at home watching, they do stay up late and watch our show. Why should they want to grow up and be president?
Well, I think you want to grow up and be president because you want to help people.
Later in the interview, Jimmy got a bit more playful, joking about how Trump's voice had changed and doing an impression of him.
But when you first started running,
you were very high voiced. Your voice was very high. Hey, China. You say China. And yeah, a lot of pointed, very high, and then you talk.
And then you got into a stage where you were just yelling. You were yelling into the microphone at people, and you're yelling at everyone. And like you don't even need the mic. And now
you're more of like a smoky, silky.
Then came the moment that drew the most attention, Fallon reaching over to mess up Trump's hair.
Can I mess your hair up?
The answer is yes, but the people in New Hampshire, where I'm going to be in about an hour from now, I hope they're going to understand.
Okay. You say yes?
Go ahead, with my hairspray.
The clip went viral, but not for the usual reasons. Many viewers and media critics felt Fallon had gone too easy on Trump during a highly charged election cycle, arguing that the segment helped soften his image at a time when scrutiny mattered most. The backlash was immediate and intense. Fallon's reputation took a serious hit, and while The Tonight Show initially held its lead, the damage lingered. By early 2017, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, with its sharper political edge, had overtaken Fallon in the ratings. At first, Fallon defended the interview, saying he was just trying to have fun. But in a 2018 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he expressed regrets, saying, "I didn't do it to normalize him or say I believe in his political beliefs or any of that stuff." He then went on to speak emotionally about the slump the show went into following the fallout, saying, "It was definitely a downtime and it's tough for morale. There's 300 people that work here, and so when people are talking that bad about you and ganging up on you in a really gang mentality, you go, alright, we get it. I heard you. You made me feel bad, so now what? Are you happy? I'm depressed. Do you want to push me more? What do you want me to do? You want me to kill myself? What would make you happy? Get over it." He added, "I'm sorry. I didn't want to make anyone angry. I never do and I never will. It's all in the fun of the show. I made a mistake. I'm sorry if I made anyone mad. And looking back, I would do it differently. after the interview was published, Trump fired back on Twitter, accusing Fallon of backpedaling and claiming that he'd personally called him after the show aired to say that the segment would bring in monster ratings. In response, Jimmy addressed it directly on the very next episode of The Tonight Show.
As you may have heard last night, the President of the United States went after me on Twitter. So, Melania, if you're watching, I don't think your anti-bullying campaign is working. It's not working. When I saw that Trump insulted me on Twitter, I was going to tweet back immediately, but I thought I have more important things to do. Then I thought, wait, shouldn't he have more important things to do? He's the president of you. What are you doing? You're the president. Why are you tweeting at me? But this is a real tweet from the president. He wrote, @Jimmy Fallon is now whimpering to all that he did the famous hair show with me where he seriously messed up my hair. And that he would have done it differently because it is said to have humanized me. He is taking heat. He called and said, monster ratings. Be a man, Jimmy. It's real.
The response to Fallon's monologue was mixed. Some saw it as him standing his ground, but for others, it came off as damage control. It didn't win back the critics who turned on him after the Trump interview, and it risked alienating the more apolitical or conservative-leaning viewers who preferred his usual neutral tone. Still, it was a rare moment. Fallon, the host known for avoiding conflict at all costs, had finally pushed back, and for better or worse, people noticed. After that monologue, the Trump back and forth quietly faded. Fallon returned to his usual apolitical rhythm, and for a while, things settled down. But a few years later, a very different kind of controversy dragged him back into headlines. This time, not for who he interviewed, but for what he promoted. In January 2022, Fallon brought Paris Hilton on the show, and during the interview, they discussed their Bored Ape NFTs.
Last time you were on the show, I asked you to explain NFTs, and you did so in a great way. Forbes has named you one of the top 50 most influential people in the NFT space. So congrats. You taught me what's up, and then I bought an ape.
I got an ape too.
This is your
mine.
ape. Are we debuting it?
It's really cool. Like the hat, the shades.
This is my ape.
It's yours. Yours is so cool. I love the red heart sunglasses.
These cartoon-style digital images had exploded in popularity, and they were ridiculously expensive. Jimmy's ape reportedly cost around $216,000. But NFTs weren't just collectibles, they were also investment assets. Fallon promoted them on national TV, but never disclosed that he had a financial stake, even though he stood to profit if the value went up. Viewers started asking questions, especially about Fallon's connection to MoonPay, the crypto payment service that facilitated many celebrity NFT purchases. A class action lawsuit was filed later that year, claiming that the entire promotion was part of a larger scheme involving MoonPay. The lawsuit alleged that celebrities like Fallon were given financial incentives to promote NFTs, and that segments like the one with Paris Hilton were essentially paid advertisements disguised as entertainment. NBC defended Fallon, saying he hadn't broken any internal rules and was free to promote personal interests. But that didn't stop the criticism. Fallon was named in the lawsuit alongside other major names, including Paris Hilton, Justin Bieber, Madonna, Kevin Hart, and Steph Curry. All were accused of promoting NFTs without properly disclosing they had financial stakes in them. And for the non-famous people who jumped in because of the hype, the outcome was brutal. The Bored Apes, which were once trading for hundreds of thousands of dollars, crashed by more than 90%, wiping out huge sums of money and leaving many investors with nothing. What was supposed to be a light-hearted late-night segment turned into a serious reputational blow, raising questions about transparency, ethics, and whether Jimmy had crossed the line he was meant to stay far away from. For now, the lawsuit is still ongoing, and its outcome remains uncertain. But the heaviest hits to Fallon's image didn't come from crypto. In 2023, the Writers Guild of America strike really put him in a spotlight he couldn't avoid. By May, thousands of writers across TV, film, and streaming platforms had walked off the job, demanding fair residuals for their work on late-night shows, scripted series, award ceremonies, and more. With writers losing their royalties and their livelihoods at stake, the issue hit close to home for late-night hosts, and Fallon was quick to voice his support.
I hope there is no strike. I support my writers, but we have a lot of staff and crew that will be affected by this, but they got to get a fair deal. So, I'll do whatever I can to support them, and hopefully there is no strike and they can figure out a deal.
That statement made it sound like Fallon was stepping up, but just hours later, one of his own staffers, Sarah Cobos, tweeted that Fallon hadn't even shown up to the meeting where employees were told they wouldn't be paid during the strike. Her tweet caught a lot of traction, and the backlash was swift. To many, it felt like Fallon was trying to play both sides, saying the right things in public, but disappearing when it really mattered. Under growing pressure, he eventually joined a Zoom call and promised to pay his staff out of pocket, but the support didn't last. After just 3 weeks, Fallon stopped the payments and put his team on unpaid leave. Meanwhile, other late-night hosts, including Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, and John Oliver, continued covering salaries for their staff throughout the strike. For a lot of people, that contrast said it all. Fallon had built his reputation on being the friendly, supportive guy, but moments like this cast real doubt on that image. And then came the Rolling Stone investigation, the story that truly shattered the persona he'd spent years building. The investigation not only revealed a toxic atmosphere behind the scenes at The Tonight Show, but it repeatedly pointed back to Jimmy himself. Staff painted his mood as erratic and unpredictable, describing good Jimmy days and bad Jimmy days. They said, "Nobody told Jimmy no. Everybody walked on eggshells, especially showrunners. You never knew which Jimmy you were gonna get, and when he was gonna throw a hissy fit." One former employee reported, "It was like if Jimmy's in a bad mood, everyone's day is fucked." His constant mood swings took a massive toll on staff. One day he'd be charming, and the next explosive and cruel, lashing out over small mistakes and even humiliating employees in front of their colleagues. It created a culture of fear and anxiety, and according to staffers, the showrunners bore the brunt of it. Between 2014, when Jimmy took over The Tonight Show, and 2023, when the Rolling Stone expose was published, 9 different showrunners had cycled through the role. That's 1 showrunner per year, which is a level of turnover unheard of in late night. And the pressure didn't stop at the top. Staff said it trickled down to every level of production, where even a small misstep could mean losing your job. Employees said they had nightmares related to work and were in a constant state of fear. One former employee said they had their first anxiety attack while working at the show and were put on anti-anxiety medication for the first time. Another employee said they felt physical ramifications of their declining mental health, like their hair thinning and weakened nail beds. 4 other employees said they're in therapy because of their experiences, and 3 people said they experienced suicidal ideation as a result of the working environment. Hearing workers joke about wanting to kill themselves was commonplace, and many refer to guest dressing rooms as crying rooms, because that's where employees would go to break down in private, away from the cameras and chaos. The article also referenced an old controversy from 2000, when Jimmy wore blackface during an SNL sketch impersonating Chris Rock. The video did the rounds again in 2020 because of the Black Lives Matter movement. Apparently, the show's senior leadership initially wanted to sweep it under the rug. It was only when it became too big to ignore that Jimmy finally issued an apology. Many staffers were upset to learn he'd done this, and later, regular diversity and culture meetings were implemented at The Tonight Show. Employees were hopeful that Jimmy wanted to make lasting changes at the show, but they were let down a few months later when Granite Bederman took over the meetings. 5 employees said she began bullying and mistreating staff, with one black employee saying Granite kept asking them, "What's going on with your hair?" So on top of everything else, there may have been a level of discrimination behind the scenes. But there's more. Remember how Jimmy denied having any drinking problems? Well, staffers told a different story. 2 employees said they saw Fallon seemingly inebriated at work in 2017. Another 2 employees said on separate occasions in 2019 and 2020, they thought they smelled alcohol on Fallon's breath when he entered an elevator with them during the workday. According to 8 former employees, Fallon's behavior seemed to be dependent on if he appeared hungover from the night before. It was all deeply unsettling. The man NBC had once branded as a safe and friendly new face of late night was now being revealed to be a nightmare behind the scenes. In a desperate attempt at damage control following the release of this investigation, Fallon called his entire staff on a Zoom call and issued an apology for the complaints raised. He said, "It's embarrassing and I feel so bad. Sorry if I embarrassed you and your family and friends. I feel so bad I can't even tell you." Even though Jimmy apologized, it felt like too little, too late. The allegations didn't just shift public perception about him, they left a stain on The Tonight Show itself. What used to be a late-night powerhouse, dominating ratings and driving internet culture, has slowly lost its grip. The numbers don't lie. Viewership for Fallon's show has fallen far behind that of Colbert's or Kimmel's, and it's hard to argue that that isn't deserved. The awkward celebrity interviews, the shady promotion of NFTs, the lack of support for writers, the horrifying working conditions behind the scenes, it all added up, and now we're seeing the consequences. That's not to say Fallon's done. The show is still on air, he still has a fan base, and his contract with NBC has been extended to 2028. Even after all the scandals, he's walked away with a slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, CBS has decided to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, despite its strong ratings, claiming it's no longer financially viable. It's a reminder that in this industry, accountability isn't evenly distributed, and Jimmy Fallon should count himself lucky because he's gotten away with a lot more than most.